space and for your important investment in our city and our regional economy and in our local food economy. And of course, thank you, Secretary Vilsack, Secretary Redding, and everyone else for joining us here today. On behalf of Mayor Gainey and the entire city of Pittsburgh, we're really proud and excited to be hosting this important conversation because, as Simon himself just noted, building strong, resilient local food economies, connecting farmers and producers in our region to markets like Pittsburgh is really important to the long-term health of our residents, to their safety, to their economic security, and to our planet, right? I mean, a global food system is very carbon intensive, and with that comes significant impairments to our environment that a locally connected system can more holistically treat, right? We can make sustainable livelihoods for farmers in our region and provide healthy food options to our residents. So the Gainey administration is deeply committed to building a robust and equitable and just food system. We, of course, if you've mentioned some of the ways in which we do that, the city of Pittsburgh operates farmers markets, which have a place in that system, but they're not its entirety. Of course, we support urban agriculture as another supplement to that system, but really it's investments like yours, programs and businesses like this one that connect farms from our region to customers in the city that can make that a long-term viable and sustainable locally connected system. So we're very proud to have you in Pittsburgh, very excited by your growth. And I apologize that before actually learning about being asked to speak at this event, I wasn't aware of your business, but you can maybe make that 4,001 members because I'm very excited to become a customer. So with that, thank you all again for attending. Looking forward to today's conversation, and it's my pleasure to introduce the Pennsylvania Secretary of Agriculture, Russell Redding.
Great. Good morning, everybody. Simon, thank you for hosting us and taking on this challenge of a very complex food system. But as I listened to you this morning, I mean, this is part of the conversation is about how you change systems, and it's not easy to do, right? But it's done with a clear vision. It's done with a lot of people who believe very deeply in the mission and those who see the value of connecting those who both feed us and who are fed by us. And to have this community together this morning is confirmation that that vision is clear, and we'll hear more about that. So thank you. To the mayor and deputy mayor, always a pleasure to be in Pittsburgh, and we have learned a lot over the years about a food system from what happens here in Pittsburgh. And I really say that, and folks from other parts of the state sort of twitch a little bit when we say it. And to be very honest, I mean, you've had a head start on this conversation about local systems. I mean, how you manage them, how you build them, who's part of those conversations. I mean, how do you take city blocks and city centers and people who feel disconnected and reconnect them through the power of food and through the work of the Food Policy Council. We learned a lot, and that's how we got to a state food policy council. We're very honest about it. Right? It was what you do here and what we have learned over the years. Governor Shapiro, in very early conversations with him about sort of the future of Pennsylvania and Pennsylvania agriculture, I was struck by both what he has seen in his 20 years of public life about ag and food and forest and people. But it was really nice because organically he recognized the need for agriculture to be a pillar, one of the four, as he describes it, main pillars of our economy. And inside of that, it's everything from the local food systems, it's food distribution, it's the processing, it's the consumption, and recognize where we are as a Commonwealth, as a keystone state, and what passes through here and what we have access to, and who we're obligated to, right? Both in terms of local communities, but also across this region and nation. I was touched by that. I was encouraged by that work, and the last 9 months of this administration have not disappointed. They have been focused intently on what we can do better, what are we doing that's good, that can be enhanced, how do we better connect our communities and recognize the natural resources, but also recognize that we have an amazingly abundant, efficient, and proud agricultural economy that has opportunity and capacity to expand much beyond where it is. And it's built on the recognition that we have a lot of farms with a lot of know-how, a lot of knowledge, who take incredible risk every day and produce an amazing abundance of product. And how do we use that and leverage that for both the brand of Pennsylvania, but also the needs that we have in the state? So we're proud of that. We've made huge investments over the last couple of years, started under the Wolf administration, and to say it has been done in a bipartisan way. I mean, many of you are aware of the Pennsylvania Farm Bill, and I point to it often that it is one of these, was a moment, and it continues to be such, where you have a chance to sort of change the trajectory of a state, where you change the narrative about what it is that we believe. And you do that through the work of food and the environment and conversation and conservation. All of that came together in a bipartisan way with our House and our Senate. And to see it today as this ownership of not of a governor, not of a secretary, but of the people of the House and the Senate, who are equally as proud, whether you're in the urban centers in the deepest parts of our state or out in the rural landscape. Everybody saw their connection to that. And that is a platform that has allowed us to do things in the state that many have talked about for a long time, and we now have the resources. When I look at what Secretary Vilsack has done, he has completely changed this conversation about the relevance of this industry and the direction of our communities. And we'll talk about that. But I'm particularly proud that you have a state and the national leadership in both Shapiro and Biden that have the very core values of making sure that folks feel connected to their community and make sure that we use the full power of the food to bring people together. So we'll hear more about that. So I just want to say thank you to Secretary Vilsack, and what an honor to have you here, to have you home in Pittsburgh and Pennsylvania. But having watched this journey over time, I think all of us know what good leadership looks like. We see vision, right? We see folks who back those words up by being out in the landscape and talking and teaching and helping us all better understand what it is that we do as a state, Department of Ag, and all who are part of this food system. And Secretary Vilsack has done that. But it's been this, those core values are not just today. I mean, to me, as I think about two-term governor and what you did on voter rights in Iowa, what you continue to do in the Obama administration first term, and then to come back and say there's more to do, and to take this on in a way that you've done it with the people you've assembled and the resources and the message and the confidence that you've given so many of us. We're honored by that, and thank you for those core values that you express every single day. I've had the privilege of working with Secretary Vilsack over time and in different capacities. I appreciate always his interest in living true to what President Lincoln called the People's Department, and I think it looks more like the People's Department today than it has in 160 years. Right? People are connected to it, they feel a sense of connection, they feel like they are noticed and valued for the work that they do and continue to do. But I would also say the best days are forward. This is about looking back. And I look today at what we can do in our capacity of people who are here in this room, in the conversations our local communities talking about what Simon noted about food and that importance of it, obviously, but also who does that is most important, I think, today. So how we do what we do, who we do it for, is now being realized in the work and the momentum of Secretary Vilsack. So welcome, Mr. Secretary. Thank you.
Russell, thanks very, very much. That's a very kind introduction. And it is good to be back in Pittsburgh. I was just thinking as the Secretary was speaking, I started out life at the Rosalia Foundling Home, which was an orphanage that was in the Hill District in Pittsburgh. My birth mother gave birth to me in that facility, and I was adopted by the Vilsack family and at a very early age. And I'm thinking of my mom and my dad, and I'm pretty certain that when they adopted me from that orphanage, they had no idea that I would be the Secretary of Agriculture of the United States. If they did know that, they would have assumed that the country was in deep trouble. But I'm pleased to be back here, and Simon, thanks very much for giving us a venue that will underscore the message that I delivered today. And it's exciting to hear of your vision, of the number of farmers that you're helping, and the commitment that you have to small and underserved and unserved producers to be part of a community. And I agree with you that this is about building community and maintaining community. And to the Secretary, I consider him a friend. I've asked him to take on several difficult tasks during the course of the Obama administration and this administration, and he's always answered the call. And I said earlier to the assembled group, they greeted me that Pennsylvania is fortunate to have one of the best, if not the best, state ag secretary, commissioner, director in the country. And I think that that's just not me saying it. I think Russell's colleagues would also say it. So we are very fortunate to have him, and very fortunate that you agreed to continue to go from the Wolf administration to the Shapiro administration. So I was very heartened to hear that you were willing to do that. Mayor, thanks very much for the opportunity to be here. Please give my regards to Ergani. And again, tell him that I expect him to solve the offensive coordinator problem that we have. On it? Good. I wonder if is it possible, where's Juan? Juan, is it possible to move this and bring the whiteboard? Okay, bring the whiteboard. So this conversation today is going to be sort of divided into three parts. The first part is I'm going to do a little speech and education in terms of what we're doing at USDA that might be of interest to folks. And then we've got a panel discussion of folks who I think will validate the importance of what we're attempting to do. And then we hope that there's some time for any questions that may arise or comments that folks have from the audience. I want to thank the panel members for being involved in this and for participating, for validating what we are attempting to do here. And I want to express my appreciation for all who are here today for taking the time from your busy schedules to spend a few minutes with us. American agriculture, I think, faces three very, very significant challenges. And Simon alluded to a part of them. First, there's the obvious challenge of a climate crisis that can potentially compromise our ability to grow and raise the food we need for ourselves and our families and for the world. I think everybody understands that problem, and we've talked a lot about it recently in this country. And I think there's also a recognition that American agriculture has seen over the last 50 or 60 years a significant consolidation. We made a decision as a country in the 1970s to change our focus in agriculture from a supply management system that did pretty well for farmers to a market-driven system. And in fact, one of my predecessors, Secretary Butts, basically encouraged farmers to plant fence row to fence row, encourage production. And Simon's absolutely right. As you encourage production of a commodity, which is a low value proposition, you've got to produce a lot of it in order to make a profit. And as people recognize that, and as they recognize the cost of producing a lot, farms got bigger. And they continue to get bigger. And this was a statistic that I sort of brought it into focus for me. I decided to look at how many farms that we had when I left the job in January of 2017, when the Trump administration came in, and now. And I was shocked to find that in that time period, relatively short, we've lost 16,700 farms in this country. And if you look at the number of acres that was in farming, that's no longer in farming during that same period, it's about 6.9 million acres that we are no longer farming, that we did just a few years ago. So I think there's a concern about the accelerated rate of consolidation and the loss of prime farmland that we need to attend to. And then last year was a record year in farm income. And when I was told that by our chief economist, I couldn't quite understand how that could be when I was also seeing a statistic that suggested that nearly 50% of American farms made no money at all. I just couldn't quite figure that out. And so I asked our chief economist and our economic research service, who got the record revenue? Who got the money? And they came back and they said, well, farms that sell more than $500,000 in sales represent 150,000 farms. It's about 7.5% of our farms. They got 89% of the income, which meant that roughly 2 million farms, or 92.5% of our farms, had to share 11%. Now, I was educated pretty well in Pittsburgh, and that sort of startled me. It explains why nearly 50% didn't make any money, and it explains why the other 40% or so made money, but the majority of money they made to support their families didn't come from farming, which they love to do. It came from that second job, or a third job, in order to maintain the farm. So it seems to me that we are facing a climate crisis, a consolidation and loss of farmland crisis, and a consolidation of farm income crisis, which threatens agriculture generally and our food system. And there are consequences to all of that. But to me, the key here is, what do we do and what can we do as a country if we're not okay with the notion of where we are today? Secretary Perdue, who was my successor and predecessor in this job, was asked about this in 2019 in Wisconsin, and he truthfully, but a bit harshly, said to the country, well, in America, it's get big or get out. And the question I think we have to ask ourselves is, are we okay with that? Are we okay with 7.5% of our farms getting 89% of the income? Are we okay with losing millions of acres of prime farmland? Are we okay with small and mid-sized producers having a more difficult time making it? Are we okay with the impact that that has on small towns? Because if there are fewer farmers, that means there are fewer farm families. That means there are fewer children. If there are fewer children, it means that schools have to consolidate in rural areas. It means that hospitals become clinics. It means that Main Street businesses are boarded up. And eventually it means that the country's defenses are compromised because a disproportionate number of those who serve us in the military come from those small towns. So in asking myself the question, are we okay with that? I concluded that we ought not to be okay with that. That we ought to create a different model that provides an opportunity for small and mid-sized producers to thrive. And I concluded that a way to do that would be to consider the farm as more than just simply a producer of product, but as an entrepreneurial exercise and enterprise that can create multiple ways for farm income to be generated. And so Fortunately, with the American Rescue Plan, the infrastructure law, and the bipartisan and the Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden helped to get through Congress, and the use of what is called the Commodity Credit Corporation, we at USDA have been able to create the opportunity to look at an entrepreneurial model that is an option to get big or get out. So I want to share with you today what that model looks like, and I'll do it relatively quickly. And I'll also make sure that you understand that we are investing significant resources in the model in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. It starts with an understanding of the important role of agriculture in terms of climate. If we're serious about climate change in this country, it starts with agriculture. I believe the food and agriculture industry is the industry that probably can get to a net zero future faster than construction or utilities or transportation. And so we took $3 billion from the Commodity Credit Corporation and we established a Climate Smart Agriculture Initiative. For simplicity, it's going to be CSA up here. And we said to the American farmer, what would you do with those resources? There were 1,000 applications that were filed. And these were applications, and you'll hear about some partnerships that were formed here today. Partnerships between major commodity groups, between major conservation groups, between retailers, food companies, those who advocate for small and underserved and unserved producers, a wide variety of partnerships. We were able to fund 141 of these projects. Every state in the country is involved, every commodity is involved, and every production method is involved. And in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, we have 25 projects involving 42 commodities and 96 climate smart practices. Now, a climate smart practice is a practice that helps to reduce greenhouse gas emissions or sequester carbon. All told, Pennsylvania has the opportunity to share in almost $889 million that's invested in these partnerships. And this money is going to go to farmers. It's paying farmers to embrace these practices, to de-risk climate smart practices, which we know over time will improve soil health and water quality and productivity. But there's an additional element to this, which makes it exciting. We're also suggesting that this ought to be different than organic and different than commodity, which are the two options today. This creates a new commodity, a climate smart commodity that's value added, so that producers of these products using these practices will get an added benefit from the marketplace. They'll get paid more. So it's an increase in income. We're also going to measure and monitor and verify the impacts of these climate smart agriculture practices, which allows these same farmers to participate in what are called ecosystem service markets. Now, these are markets in which folks who need offsets to their own greenhouse gas emissions or carbon issues can pay farmers for the results that farmers can get, because farmers can actually operate at a negative impact. They can go below zero with many of these practices. So this is an additional income source that didn't exist before. Part of this effort also is the conversion of agricultural waste. By the way, we're investing $300 million in this effort to make sure that we are verifying and monitoring and measuring these impacts. We're taking agricultural waste and creating a new commodity, a new product for farmers to sell. There's a lot you can do with manure other than over applying it to land. There's a lot you can do with the waste product of anything that's grown and raised. One of the most exciting opportunities is sustainable aviation fuel. As I've explained to a lot of audiences, I get electric cars, you know. The battery one's out, you pull the side of the road and get a charge and off you go. What if you're in a plane and the battery wears out? How's that work? It doesn't work. So we're not going to have electric planes. We're not going to have battery-powered planes. We're not going to have hydrogen-powered planes for a long time. So this industry, this aviation industry, needs a low-carbon fuel. And it can be produced from agricultural waste. It's a 36 billion gallon opportunity, which is 2.5 times the size of the current biofuel industry. And that industry currently supports 400,000 jobs, to your point, Simon. So this is not just an opportunity for farmers to get another income source by selling their waste, but it's also a job creator. So that's one strategy for this farm that we're trying to keep in business. So instead of just selling their commodity, they're getting value added by selling a climate smart commodity. They're selling a credit and getting new income, and they're converting their waste down in a processing facility down the road, which creates jobs in those rural communities and a new income source for the farmer. But there's also a second strategy, which is tied to climate, and this is where Simon and Harvey Farms comes into play. It's the local and regional food system. And we're investing in that as well. Now, the first thing we did was to understand that there is not a sufficient processing capacity in the country. You mentioned the efficiency. It has become incredibly efficient. The problem with efficiency is it's not resilient. So in the throes of the pandemic, we realized, oops, one plant goes down, farmers got no place to market, shelves at the grocery store are empty. So we needed to expand capacity. So we took resources and we have invested in additional processing capacity. By the way, I should back up here. There are tax credits and there are about $4.3 billion of resources available to help set this up. We took hundreds of millions of dollars and we established loan guarantee programs, grant programs for processing capacity for meat and poultry. And in fact, an egg facility in Pennsylvania was a recipient of one of these processing loan guarantees, $12.5 million of guarantee to allow them to modernize their facility. There is a community fund called the New Hampshire Community Fund that currently is sitting on about $130 million, and they are going to make grants sometime next year. You can apply for additional processing money up to through November to expand processing. We also recognize that it's not just meat and poultry, that there are other commodities that need processed, and there are other items that need to be put into the supply chain. And so we decided to empower commissioners, directors, and secretaries of agriculture with resources to enable them to help make grants at the state level. So I'm about ready to throw my good friend, also riding under the bus here. The state of Pennsylvania received $26.5 million, which the secretary has. Guy right there. See him after the meeting. And he's going to distribute this resource over time to help expand processing in the Commonwealth, which is going to help support capacity and build additional markets for producers. We know how difficult it is to establish a regional or local system. And so we took $420 million and we established what are called 12 regional business centers to help people get the technical assistance and the financial assistance to build or support or strengthen the local and regional food system. Pennsylvania happens to be interesting because it's positioned so that it gets the benefit of 2 of these 12 regional business centers. You've got one that's operated by the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture's foundation. That's one center, and then there's the Rural Action is operating one in Appalachia, which also benefits Western Pennsylvania. So you got two of these centers that are available for people to go to and say, we have a regional system, we want to strengthen it, we're interested in grant programs or loan programs to help us finance it, or we're just getting started. How do we do this? We also continue to invest in our LAMP program, which is our local ag marketing program. It provides resources for farmers markets, for local and regional food systems, for value-added producer grants. That is a program that's funded through the Farm Bill. It's going to continue, and that provides resources to places like this to stay in business. We have the Farm to School program that we invested significant money in, and this is a tremendous opportunity. We invested $10 million in grants to Farm to School, to schools, to learn more about how they can buy local. And it turns out that that's going to help 5,000 schools better link up to their local farmers. I don't know if you've got any schools that you might be doing business with. Okay. This is a tremendous opportunity that we want to see significantly expanded. We're also providing equipment grants so that schools have the ability to take that locally produced food and convert it into good, nutritious food for kids. So there's a significant investment in Pennsylvania in this local and regional food system. About $8 million so far in this program. Farm to School is a little over $2 million. But the big opportunity here is also in procurement. The reality is the state of Pennsylvania, the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, purchases a lot of food for food banks and for schools. And in the past, we just basically gave money and said, buy food wherever you can. And of course, people being the way they are, they try to find the best deal. And they bought food that was transported 100 miles, 200 miles, 500 miles, 1,000 miles. Heavy climate cost, and it's not supporting the local and regional food system. So we have started empowering the Secretaries of Agriculture to use resources that we're providing to incent them and to encourage them to invest in local and regional food producers. And this is pretty significant. All told, the state of Pennsylvania over the last several years has received $171 million for that purpose. And a lot of that money is with the guy down at the end there. You can see him after the meeting. And we just recently awarded a significant amount of money both for schools and for food banks to the Secretary so that he in turn can figure out ways in which he can help build and support the local and regional food system, strengthen the supply chain with these resources. And hopefully we'll see an increase of these resources over time. So it's two strategies, and then there's a third strategy, which has to do with renewable energy. In the IRA, the president wanted to make sure that farmers had the ability to produce their own electricity, their own power, with windmills and solar panels and so forth. And so there's an historic amount of money in this program called REAP, Renewable Energy for America program. But they also put money to help co-ops transition from fossil fuel generated power to renewable power. And this offers an opportunity for farmers who take a REAP grant and build a facility on their farm and produce more than they need for their farming operation. There's a farm in Rhode Island that took a $175,000 grant from REAP, built out a system, and they're currently getting $66,000 from the electric company for the excess electricity that they're generating. This is a brand new revenue source. This is better market opportunities and more competitive pricing. This is a new revenue source. This is a new revenue source. We're also doing a fertilizer initiative that could help reduce costs. So what we've built here is a situation where it's not just a commodity that you're selling and maybe getting a government payment over here, and that's the only way you're surviving. You've got a climate-smart agricultural value-added proposition. You've got an ecosystem service market credit you're getting. You're converting your waste into something more valuable, helping you create jobs. You're producing rural energy, renewable energy on your farm and selling it to the co-op. You're taking advantage of local processing capacity, maybe even ownership in that processing capacity. You are involved in a local and regional food system, and Simon made the case beautifully, which is schools and others, actually when you reduce and eliminate the middleman, and you have a direct communication with the farmer, the customer can potentially pay less and the farmer can make more, which is the beauty of a local and regional food system. You're also, by the way, reducing the miles that food is traveling, which helps on the climate side. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different ways to have a single farm generate something beyond the commodity that they're producing. And all of this is funded over the course of the next several years. By the way, the state of Pennsylvania it's already received 178 grants here, over $14 million in resources. So millions of dollars have already been invested, and in some cases, hundreds of millions of dollars have been invested, and there's even a fertilizer plant in Ashton that's potentially going to get some resource. So that's the model. 4 things have to happen for this to continue at the congressional level. And then I'm going to leave you with some things that I think the state of Pennsylvania could do. And then I'm going to sit down and listen. 1, we have to have a farm bill that actually protects and enhances local and regional food system programs. We can't see any backtracking of that. And I probably should have pointed out that part of this also involves transition for those who wish to transition to organic. We have an organic transition program designed to make it a little bit easier, provide some financial assistance for those who are willing to take that high value route. So the Farm Bill can't take a step back, has to take a step forward. 2, there's money in the Inflation Reduction Act, around $20 billion, almost $20 billion, that will support climate-smart agricultural practices and will provide the resources to continue beyond the 3 or 4 years that we have of funding that we currently have to a decade or more. We need to preserve that. There are some that want to take that money and convert it into other purposes. It's a big pot of money, and as folks try to put a farm bill together, they like to look for big pots of money and try to change in the direction. You can't let them do that. The CCC, the Commodity Credit Corporation, is a corporation that starts each fiscal year with $30 billion from import fees. It helps to fund a lot of the farm bill programs, but there's always a cushion, if you will. It can be anywhere from $15 to $20 billion of resource that could potentially be used by a secretary. We want to make sure that the capacity to use that creatively is not restricted or restrained. There's some folks who were upset with the fact that I took this money and used it to create climate-smart agriculture, despite the fact that 80 organizations, including every major farm organization, asked me to do this. They realized this was the best way to de-risk and get farmers involved. We've already signed up several thousand farmers, and about 1 million acres are already included in this. We anticipate that those climate-smart agriculture projects will help 60,000 farmers and maybe 25 million acres. And we'll learn what works, and then we can use that IRA money, CCC money, to continue to promote it. And then, of course, we need a budget. We need a budget so we can have staff folks who implement these programs. Because if we don't have a budget, then Bob and Heidi are going to take a vacation and nothing's going to get done. It's ridiculous. So those are the 4 things that have to happen in Washington, D.C. to ensure that this continues. But I think you all have a responsibility. I think Russell's done a terrific job with his farm bill. I think Pennsylvania could start the process of understanding and asking itself, how can we be a center of bioproduct conversion of waste to something that is bio-based? How can Pennsylvania lead that effort, both in terms of agricultural waste and forestry, forest waste? How can Penn State University help craft the future set of industries that will, for the most part, be located in rural areas, converting that waste? How can this group and others work with the RECs and farm groups to enhance the opportunity to convert the renewable energy that can be produced on the farm to help create lower cost energy in rural areas? How can the state continue to expand processing capacity so that there is additional competition where farmers get a decent price? How can we link up these food business centers in a way here in Pennsylvania that enhances what Harvey Farms is doing and outfits like Harvey Farms to have more and more and more of this happening across the state? How can you utilize those food business centers in an effective way to bring resources in to support this local and regional food system? And then how can you encourage farmers to participate in the climate smart agricultural activities in a way that will create new revenue for them and information for us so we know how to invest future conservation resources? So it seems to me that that we're now in a situation where we're developing a partnership here. Asking ourselves, are we okay with get big or get out? No, we're not. This is a different model. This is a more hopeful model. This is an entrepreneurial model. But now we have to make sure that we invest in it, we strengthen it, we expand it, and we utilize it. And that's what brings me to Pennsylvania today. And I would say a companion effort can take place in every city. This is not just a rural initiative. This is also linking urban and rural. We've started that with our urban-centered farming operations, and we need to continue to expand that. One of the individuals who is heavily involved in helping shape that policy at USDA is Meg Campbell, who is a Pittsburgh native, and she's quite interested in bringing opportunities to Pittsburgh, and I am too. So there's an opportunity there that I think we should explore here, and would be happy to have Meg reach out to you and see what could be done in terms of a partnership. Okay, so that's what we're doing at USDA. Now what we're going to do is I'm going to turn it over to Heidi. She's going to run the show from here on out, and we're going to hear from folks who are engaged in parts of this, so that you can see that it's actually functioning and working, and that people are excited about it. And then we'll hear from all of you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thanks, Secretary, and thanks everyone for being here today. I do want to recognize my counterpart, Bob Morgan from Rural Development, and in the audience is King Whetstone, the Regional Director for NASS. Thank you, and appreciate you all being here. I'm the State Executive Director for Farm Service Agency. I'm the first woman to serve in this role here in Pennsylvania, so thank you. I'm very proud to serve the vibrant Harris. I'm going to be moderating our panel today, so we're excited to have such distinguished guests serving up here on the panel as well as the audience. And I do want to give a big thank you to our local staff here in Pennsylvania who have helped prepare the chairs and also welcoming you at the table. It's always important to recognize everyone who's doing this work. So real quickly, I just want to invite Ben is going to be speaking first. He's the founder and CEO of Unified Fields Incorporated for 20 years. He's focused on I'm going to take Ben. Yeah, I'm going to bring the mic over to each of you. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. He's the founder and CEO of Unified Fields Incorporated. For 20 years, he's focused on artisanal butchery. He received a meat and poultry inspection readiness grant and for his mobile processing operation, which has been focusing on serving small scale and local producers in the area. Ben.
Thanks, everybody. Hi, everybody. My name is Ben Buchanan, founder, CEO of Unified Fields. I have been a butcher for over 20 years now. I'm Pittsburgh native, and I founded the company in 2020 when the industry kind of got turned on its head during COVID, and farmers just had no market access, and consumers were left high and dry with empty shelves and high prices. So I decided to kick it into gear and use all the knowledge that I've gained through the years to try and be like Johnny Appleseed, but with butcher knowledge. I spent this last summer traveling the country, teaching mainly ranchers that want to start their own meat processing, how the process goes, everything from slaughter to processing, value added and HACCP and everything like that. I also operate a mobile meat processing rig that travels around the greater Pittsburgh area, and that is what we got our grant for, was to upgrade it so we could become fully USDA inspected, which will allow the farmers that we serve access to a more broad market and be able to, like we said, bridge the gap between urban and rural, because there's a lot of people in the cities, but there's not a lot of animal agriculture in the cities. And so what we try and do is bring that to the city so people can have access to wholesome and quality meat wherever they are. So this has helped our organization a lot by being able to fund this upgrade, because everything in meat processing is very capital intensive. It's all stainless steel and motorized equipment, which costs lots of money. So startup funds are definitely helpful, and it's helping our community. We are partnered with Community Kitchen Pittsburgh, who also received an MPERG grant this year to get equipment and supplies and build out a HACCP plan so they could also become fully USDA inspected and open up their retail markets. So we've been partnered with them with the butcher training program. We teach an intro to butcher class that's embedded in their accredited culinary program, and we keep expanding on it, and ultimately we're hoping to have a full butcher apprenticeship program with an apprenticeship center that's registered with the state, and be able to bring in people from the region and from out of town. I have clients all over the country that are asking me, can I just send somebody to you to train, and then you can come back and they can work for me, because all this funding that's going into meat processing expansion is great, but if there's nobody that knows what they're doing, it's not going to do very much good, because it's a high-skilled industry and it is a dying trade because of all the consolidation that's happened over the years. There's not many people that know how to do everything, to take the animal from love and life to your fork and knife. There's a lot to it, and it took me about 3 years to learn how to do that. So what I'm trying to do now is just teach as many people as I can, namely ranchers, because they are the ones with their backs against the wall right now, facing the loss of their farm and not making good income. They need to be able to cut out the middleman and do their own processing, and so that's what we're trying to do with the mobile rig, is show them a model of replication that they can get started with small scale with minimal upfront cost. So that's how it helped. Being that I've traveled the country talking to all these startup butchers and ranchers that are starting their own processing, I've been able to gain a lot of insight on some of the challenges that they've had along the way. One of the biggest ones is the labor issue. Once they're up and running, finding people that know what they're doing and can put out good quality products that aren't adulterated and everything. And the other big challenge is with inflation happening, a lot of these grants that have gotten awarded, from the time that you write the grant until the time that you get awarded the grant and start implementing your program, prices have gone up significantly on a lot of equipment, especially refrigeration and everything. So I find a lot of my clients are feeling a little high and dry when they come to crunching the numbers with their project, because they wrote the grant for this much money thinking that's what the project is going to cost, and now it's gone up significantly. So that's a big challenge for folks, keeping up with inflation and procuring the equipment and everything. There's big lead times on a lot of equipment, so it's tough to get on budget and on schedule when you're building a meat processing facility. But I do really appreciate all the effort that USDA has been putting, and the PA Department of Agriculture with the reimbursement program and everything to help these processors expand capacity, because there are still a lot of good butchers out there that know what they're doing, and they need help too, because they, since COVID, have just been operating at capacity and just trying to keep their heads above water. And so any little bit of stuff, equipment or anything that can help them expand and serve more farmers in the area is great. So, sorry, I think I went for beans there, but I got a lot to say about
You can
this.
just actually pass the mic around. You're up.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Brittany Swervel. I'm the Vice President of Nutrition and Education Programs at Adagio Health. I have the pleasure of overseeing USDA programs, the WIC program in 5 counties here in Western Pennsylvania. Thank you for all of the USDA's work with our formula shortage. That any extra help we could get to get formula to families was really appreciated during that time. I also oversee our SNAP education program that we call Adagio Health Power Up. That is a nutrition and physical education program that is designed to deliver evidence-based education to the lower income population. And with that, we partnered with the Pittsburgh Public School District in 2013 to provide that education. The SNAP Ed grant has changed over the years to include or to recognize that education alone cannot just stand by itself. Education is very important. Everyone here knows broccoli is good for you, but just because you know that does not mean you're going to eat the broccoli. And what is the reason why you're eating that broccoli? Is that there's no money for you to purchase the broccoli. If you have money, is there transportation to get to a location? Does your local store, corner store, not serve that fresh produce? When you get the broccoli, what do you do with it? How do you eat it? So now the SNAP Ed world is working more with policy systems and environments so that we can adjust or impact those barriers so the healthy choice is the easy choice for anyone, regardless of your income or your circumstances. So that has allowed us to partner with Pittsburgh Public Schools to pursue the Farm to School grant through the USDA. This is also in collaboration with the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council and Pro-Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh Public School District is the second largest district in Pennsylvania. They have 54 schools at the moment. Of their student body, 64% of those students are identified as economically disadvantaged. Within those 54 schools as well, 19 are limited to serving reheated food that's prepared in a central kitchen and then distributed out due to infrastructure, space, available equipment, etc. there. So that leaves 1 in 4 students in the district with lack of access to a cafeteria that can process and serve fresh produce. Additionally, only 5 cafeterias are actually equipped to offer a salad bar, while 22 schools have gardens on site, thanks in large part to Pro-Pittsburgh and their efforts to get those school gardens. So really the goal of our Farm to School grant that we are awarded in July is to help, 1, bring the education, and 2, help some of those schools that do have the infrastructure and capacity to bring some 3-bowl sinks into their buildings so that they can have the equipment to process that fresh produce from their gardens, and also to purchase some salad bar equipment for them to use. Thanks in large part to the Pittsburgh Public School District, their food service department has been a really huge advocate and champion along with us to make these changes, and they're an integral partner in developing this grant and implementing it here moving forward. And I'll save some time and pass the mic.
Good morning, my name is Lisa Freeman. I'm the owner of Freeman Family Farm and Greenhouse, and we are located in a food desert here in the city of Pittsburgh. My zip code is 15233. We are certified, USDA certified food desert. I have a close relationship. I want to thank U.S. Secretary Vilsack for coming. I want to thank PA Secretary Redding, who is a dear friend of mine and supporter. When I was ready to give up, he came in, he happened to be there, and he told me, don't give up. That's what farmers do. And because of him, I didn't give up. And I kept going. It was the vision of my husband, my late husband, who died, to develop a mom and pop store in our community because we don't have fresh fruit and vegetables. We don't have a store that you can walk to. Grandmas have to get on a bus far away and carry all those packages home. Before my husband died, that was our dream and our goal. I was so fortunate to be awarded a Healthy Food Financing Initiative grant through the Reinvestment Fund in partnership with USDA. I received the Food Financing Fund from the state, from the Food Trust. I've gotten several awards from local foundations that support agriculture, and it's just not enough that we're opening up a grain grocer. It's not enough that poor people are, just because I put a tomato there, that they're now gonna beat down my door, because that's not true. We have developed a wraparound service where we have healthy cooking and eating. Adagio has been with us. We partner with the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. We are a social service. We provide health services. We provide health testing, preventative care, stress relief, exercise, testing, counseling. Now we're working with and reaching out for a potential grant partner with the Jewish Healthcare Fund to address low infant mortality with the Black and brown community mothers. We do a lot in our neighborhood to support and bring good health and living to people who have been denied. And most people here, I work with you in one way or the other. We cross paths, we partner. And now we have to have a hard and honest truth. And I was in my introduction, and I feel, and before I met U.S. Secretary Vilsack, I have a colleague here who said to me that you are a strong person regarding policy, that you are in the woods, that you're in the weeds regarding your policy. And as I look at you and your four peers and your tiers of how you're going to bring agriculture to all of us, I told you I wrote a book, and I'm here to give it to you. The book is really, and this is this is a true story. We don't want an effing farm on our street. True story. This was a direct quote from people in my community. And abroad, different things. Zoning in the city of Pittsburgh is not conducive to food deserts. That's one of the biggest obstacles. Mom and pop stores cannot be built. They have to have been brought back from 2 centuries ago and try to put up to building code standards of today. It's the municipal code for the state of Pennsylvania that denies low-income communities from building food corner stores. That's a big hurdle. Only through the mayor of the city of Pittsburgh, Ed Gainey, it took us a year and a half, almost 2 years to jump those hurdles. That was a major hurdle. It incurred so much expense. They put up every barrier to make me say no, 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 which I had to eat. And the expense of building this has now tripled the cost, and I'm left begging. My general contractor, who is so like, yeah, we're believing your cause, Miss Lisa, rah, 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 he doesn't know I don't have the money to pay him. Truly. Initially, it was supposed to be finished in February, but because of the hurrah of my neighbor and my general contractor, like, Miss Lisa's doing something great for her community, we gotta get her in by Thanksgiving. I'm like, oh my God, I have to really find a way to pay the man. I just left him, I'm like, oh, what kind of lighting do you want here? We're gonna be talking a lot, and I'm sweating bullets. And I'm really, really afraid. I have found every penny in my purse, every penny in between the cushions, every conversation that has been made, and I'm still not across the finish line. But that's the onus I had to take. I sold my house with 6 bedrooms, 4 baths, and now I sacrificed, and I'm living in an RV on that site. That's quite a sacrifice that I made, because that's what I wanted for my community. Now, when we look at your map, and I'm not criticizing, it's a very good plan, but looking at policies and how people now are trying to enter into your good plan that are taking advantage of zip codes 15233, your policy, there's no way you would know these things. But because I'm there and I see and people look at me and I'm a leader, there's no way you know. There's some room for improvement with accountability, for one, and transparency. There is another player, and your assistants, we'll blame him. It's his fault, because he put the announcement of all these people who've gotten funding. We'll just round it up. $350,000 in my same zip code where I live, 4 blocks away. $350,000 who's got a lamp funding based on the low income designation and their promise that they were going to help employ minority entrepreneurs. There's not one minority entrepreneur that they've helped. None. This is a developer who was not from the community, who chased the money, that came into that community and took money, precious resources from our community. There's no way that you would know that. But my Russell Redding, when I have to report, I have the highest outcomes. And he asked for receipts. Isn't that that's what the young people say, show me the receipts. When I respond back to our Department of Agriculture, I have to show pictures and receipts. Isn't that true? That's the truth. When people come into our low-income Black and brown communities and take advantage of very precious resources, that is totally unfair, and that money should be given back. It should be reclaimed. There's no transparency. How can this happen? It's a loophole because you base that on trust. I asked about that, and for that application, you get priority if you can be shown that you live in a food desert or that address is in a food desert. Are they being rewarded because they were brave enough to open up a business here, or are they required to give back to that community? It's a very sad story. Thank you.
I'm so happy you were here in Pittsburgh. I've never met you before. That was great.
Lisa,
Thank you. Go ahead.
You should talk to the secretary about that, because the administration of that program is given to the states. So we can talk about the requirements and whether or not we put guardrails on the secretary or how this program, but we will certainly look into it. But it's administered at the state level. We give money to the state, and the state makes the decision about where the resource goes. But thank you for bringing it up.
Yeah, I just want to thank you as well for the conversation of how do we help small family farms? How do we build this network together? It's very refreshing that we're trying to solve that problem. And the big organization is going to have lots of errors. It's really a tricky thing to do. It's like, how do you actually get that money to the people that really need it? We've been very fortunate. I run a distribution company here in Pittsburgh called Three Rivers Grown. And we've been fortunate enough to continue to grow our business, and there's several different ways. I love your chicken scratch up here. I'm glad you didn't go for the PowerPoint thing. This is beautiful. But I started out with a farmer cooperative doing organic produce. It's called Clarion River Organics, and it's still functioning. I think Lindsay's here. She runs it. There she. But it's a group of farmers that says, hey, how do we get stuff to the city? How do we continue to be with our families? We just had a farm tour. And in addition to all the things that you said of why supporting family farms is important, our farmers said, hey, I do this not because produce is an easy way to make money. I do it because I want my kids to know how to work. And I think kids that are grown up on farms, people that are connected with the earth, we create good American citizens that are going to save our country. I really think that that's as far as bridging that rural-urban divide, we are. It's the heart of who we are as a country, I think. So, but we were fortunate enough, you gave us money for our REAP grant. We have a big warehouse up there. We put 85 solar panels on it. We're offsetting all the electricity that we use to cool that produce. We are fortunate enough, we benefited from the food bank program. So their purchasing program, when we have excess, we're able to sell to the food bank, and they're able to give us slightly above commodity pricing for us. We're also partnering with the program in Ohio, which seems to be run a little bit better than the one in Pennsylvania. They do crop planning with us and other things like that, so that the farmers can actually prepare for exactly what their needs are, which is pretty amazing. And then we've applied for a local food partnership grant to help expand what we're doing here in Pittsburgh. So I don't know if you know anybody there, but maybe you can tell them that we're doing good work. Maybe we should get that grant. But no, we've benefited some of our the organic certification grants for our farmers. We've gotten help that way for our facility. From a regulatory thing, it's hard for us with requirements from like Whole Foods as far as food safety. The FSMA wasn't complete. And so industry created their own standards, and so now they're dropping the certifier that we have to go with the California standards, which are written for California. So you can't grow leafy greens with animals within a mile, and that's just not the way it is in Pennsylvania. And it just makes it really hard for small farmers to be able to just get dropped like that from a customer who's 80% of your business. And so any leadership from the government down as far as protecting the small producers from that angle is really helpful too. So thank you both for all your hard work.
Great, thanks, Nathan. Just to mention, I'm also a farmer. And it's a big reason why I serve in the role that I do. My husband and I farm in northeast Pennsylvania in the Poconos. We run a local food hub, and trying to do a lot of the same things that Harvey and Nathan are doing here in Pittsburgh. So kudos to Simon and Nathan and Ben for all the amazing work you do with farmers. I'm going to pass it over here to Alice.
I think I'm a professor, so I'm going to take my full 4. So my name is Alice Julier, and I am a professor and the founding director of the Food Studies program at Chatham University since 2010. And I wish Secretary Vilsack would come and teach my class on food systems because, that'll be hard to replicate. So I have had the pleasure of participating in the growth of the campus and the academic programs and a community that's really dedicated to envisioning a more just and ecologically sound food system. The Fox School of Sustainability, which is our campus in the North Hills, is 400 acres of farm and forest. It's beyond LEED certified. We do a lot with renewable energy and training students with that, as well as food system and environmental conservation. And so our students do all sorts of applied learning and projects in agriculture, food production, nutrition, food systems, and culinary arts. I will be honest that when I designed this program, I went around to a lot of land-grant universities and said, not that, not that, not that. The graduates of our master's program and our dual MBA program end up working for organizations like Harvey, like the Pittsburgh Public Schools, like PASA Sustainable Farming, anti-hunger organizations, the USDA, local food policy councils. I think I've had a student intern or a project with every single person at this table who is local. And then also they're embedded in these regional food system transformations. And I think I'm here in my capacity as the director of craft, but I think it's important to recognize that what we are doing is training a diverse body of people from all over the US and the world, many of whom are queer and BIPOC and mostly women and extraordinarily passionate about food and agriculture. And we believe that these are sort of the people you need, the labor in the system to enact the things and the programs that you're talking about. So for the past 5 years, I've also been the director of CRAFT, which is the Center for Regional Agriculture, Food and Transformation, a tiny little center at Chatham that operates in multiple program areas. We do food system research, education, practical interventions, all with the aim of actualizing the power of communities to transform food systems. It's like 1 faculty, 4 staff, and 20 students, and hundreds of partners. So we're a small center in a small school but we occupy an important place in sustaining regional food economies, and we provide novel approaches to long-standing problems while training and supporting students. The people I think of as the warriors, builders, and weavers who are dedicated to this. The USDA has recognized and provided support for our work since 2019, starting with a local food promotion program grant that focused on expanding and reinforcing regional and local grain economy. This is not easy to do outside of spaces that already have grain being produced. So we do food system mapping, bread and baker training events, consumer engagement programs helping local grain processors and producers, and seizing a currently untapped market opportunity to grow and sell local grains in Western PA. So we also try to alleviate barriers for processors around working with and sourcing local grains. Local grains processing, we find out, depends on someone who's really willing to commit to doing it and to investing. We foster business partnerships between regional farmers, millers, and value-added producers. We worked with Harvey to sell $14,000 worth of local grain producers during a single month we called Regional Grains Month. And we've hosted over 30 professional and community workshops, including a grain-focused conference called Grainstorm that bring together farmers, bakers, business owners, and other stakeholders in the grain space for a day of collaboration. And that led to the creation of the Commonwealth Grains Alliance. In 2022, we got a USDA Farmers Market Promotion Program grant that we call Cash Cow, the Business Model Diversification Strategies for Agricultural Businesses. So this program aids farmers in creating diversified revenue streams, very similar to what the Secretary was talking about, particularly for things like disruptors like climate change and global pandemics. So we do training and technical assistance program to help season extending value-added products and meaningful on-farm experiences. Our most recent 14-week market readiness course started this week. And we also host an extensive network of consultants to provide farmers with access to experts in recipe development, grant writing, business startup, food safety regulation, and more. We host a market partner network, a group of independent markets and grocery stores, including Harvey and Edinburgh Market, that are looking for farmer-created value-added products to ensure that farmers can quickly and easily make connections with markets locally to sell their product. Finally, we are a key partner in the Central Appalachian Regional Food Business Center, headed by Rural Action in Ohio. Our center has $16 million to give away in Business Builder sub-award grants to farm and food businesses in the region. CRAFT will dedicate the next 5 years to creating more support networks and funding for our regional producers and market. And as we begin this important work, we really hope that the overwhelming national, tribal, and territorial enthusiasm for this initiative translates into the RFBC becoming part of the next Farm Bill. Like, it's just an incredibly important program, and I can already see in the last few months that we've been enacting it, what kind of impact it will have. In particular, creating partnerships across states, I think is a key piece of what we're doing that I'm quite happy with. Our faculty also have worked with SARE grants for diverse networks of farmers, sharing infrastructure needs and training. We're also engaged with the Transition to Organic initiative and funding that's come out, working to train our students to become organic inspectors. Again, thinking about ways in which people can enter into the system and become workers and well paid in that process as well. So the USD support of our center underscores that, to me, that these diversified food systems depend upon reaching communities embedded, like these programs that are really embedded with their communities, with people and schools. So Chatham is this small former women's college, where I understand there's good sledding. We're what I think of as a non-traditional recipient of USDA funds. But this funding gives us reach to support the non-traditional farm and food producers and food system participants. So I really want to underscore the importance of what the USD is doing, because I think it, number one, helps create professional pathways for those students who are supported in their training, their research and projects that are housed by CRAFT. Our graduate students have done things all the way from building community bread ovens like the one here in Braddock that's at our farm, and then in Braddock supported by our former mayor, now Senator Fetterman. The doing data mapping and feasibility studies for organizations that don't have the capacity to do it themselves, and the business and marketing plans for farmers, food producers, and value-added products. I think you get diversity and you get a more robust and resilient system when you support things that are not necessarily the things that have been supported in the past. So thank you for all that you've done for us.
Hi everyone, I'm Marty Martz. I'm Executive Director of Edinburgh Market, a 501c3 fresh food business incubator operating in Northwest PA since 2017. The market's mission is to provide year-round access to fresh local food for our low-income, low-access community, an entrepreneurial marketplace for small farms and food producers, and an understanding of the importance of both. In 5.5 years of operation, in our 900 square foot space, we've sold $1.2 million in food and food-related items, grown or made within 150 miles of Edinburgh. Our business model, and I've heard a couple other numbers this morning, this afternoon, is a 75-25 split with producers, meaning we've paid out over $850,000, again, with a 900 square foot store. My partner in life and business, Curtis, runs the day-to-day operation of the market, which allows me to focus on doing what I can to build a more resilient food system in Northwest PA. Previously, I worked in education and outreach, and I learned things like meeting facilitation and consensus building, and I think those are really important skills in food system work. Currently overseeing a Healthy Food Financing Initiative grant lost my place, supports a 3-county aggregation and delivery collaboration between 3 unaffiliated but like-minded markets and 2 farm partners in Erie, Crawford, and Venango counties. This project increases the variety of healthy foods we're able to offer our customers while building sales for participating farmers. We run a weekly route between the 3 markets, and farmers, producers can drop off at any of the markets, and their products can be delivered to all 3. Lessons learned, well, there's a reason why we've handed aggregation and distribution off to Cisco and similar companies, as Simon and Nathan may relate to. Micro-scale food systems are comprised of individuals, many of whom are working farm jobs for financial stability or health insurance, farm jobs plus off-farm jobs, so 2 jobs at least. Flexibility is key between growers and markets and customers. We work hard to connect our customers with the folks who sell through the market so they can put a face with a farm and value their products appropriately. I've consulted with the Erie School District on 2 farm-to-school grants, and I'm currently working with them on an urban ag and innovative production grant that builds off that farm-to-school work and creating a agri-culinary pathway for youth interested in farm and food careers. And I work with the Erie Food Policy Advisory Council. First of all, thank you, USDA and Pennsylvania Department of Ag folks, for the investments you've made so far. They're critical. Based on my experiences, I'd like to see some of the Farm Bill funds that support commodity-scale farming move to the other end of the spectrum to better support those small-scale diversified farmers and food makers who grow food intentionally to feed their communities. Help us to redefine and promote that agri-culinary pathway for youth, especially urban youth, who have little opportunity to know a farmer or food entrepreneur. Not all people are suited to or interested in obtaining a college degree. Ag and ag-related businesses are a great alternative for those who want to work with their hands, are problem solvers, and enjoy outdoor work, but it's difficult to find information on these careers. Along those same lines, I'd like to help centralize resources for adults considering food and farming careers. We've been grant writing for an expansion to a 3,500 square foot space that will include a classroom to help fill those needs in the region. Folks from Craft and PASA are written into these grants so we can leverage their resources for our communities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hannah Smith Brubaker. I'm a farmer and executive director of PASA Sustainable Agriculture. Thank you, Secretaries Vilsack and Redding. I am perhaps more importantly today proud to be here as the daughter of a U.S. steelworker and union mason at Clairton Mill here in Pittsburgh. PASA represents over 20,000 historically underserved and unserved and small farms throughout the Mid-Atlantic and Northeast U.S. We're very grateful to be entrusted with USDA funds to promote climate smart practices and markets. The hallmark of our project is our ongoing soil health benchmark study and financial health benchmark study. These are programs that are farmer-led. They're on-farm, peer-to-peer programs that have proven to be trusted entrance points to our services. And it really sets the stage not only for climate smart practice implementation, but for income stream innovations that lead to market expansions. Especially for historically underserved and unserved farmers, these new and innovative channels, such as through agroforestry, where a farmer can tap into new markets while also utilizing the #1 best action to combat the ravaging of farms by climate change, planting trees. So the amount of federal funding allocated by the current administration for conservation on farms is unprecedented. It's absolutely wonderful, and it can make even more of a difference in the marketplace with more and expanded programs like the Climate Smart Commodities Program, such as the one that we were awarded, where farmers play the primary role in addressing the challenges presented to us by a changing climate. We're committed to a system that is focused on anti-oppression, and this framework is implemented and central to our culture, our programs, and our services. When we first were awarded the Partnerships for Climate Smart Commodities grant, we were thrilled at the opportunity to fund what we know works for historically underserved farmers as we build trust toward a deeper relationship with USDA. That said, as the program is being fleshed out, we're finding ourselves being pulled more and more into some of the historical bureaucratic restrictions that can create the same problems that have existed. And so we're trying to be vigilant watchers for these blind spots. And so Secretary Vilsack, just as you, and it's important to you to use the CCC funds for really creative processes, we encourage you to ensure the NRCS and their oversight of the Climate Smart program continues to allow creativity and not bend to the status quo that hasn't worked for farmers. We caution against abandoning the very innovative ideas we proposed because they don't neatly fit into the USDA service framework. All that said, we're super grateful for all the funding through the ARP and the IRA. We're also really thrilled with the recent announcement of the American Climate Corps. This is so exciting for us. In addition to serving as a major step in the direction of utilizing all that was good about the original CCC, only for today's climate issues, it's such a fabulous opportunity for field training for the next generation of NRCS field workers. Educating USDA workers about climate smart practices that are in high demand for farmers. So first and foremost, again, agroforestry practices. These practices need to be promoted at the federal level and require states to follow suit. Several Northeast states don't currently fund silvopasture, one of the top recognized practices for climate mitigation and carbon sequestration. So it puts us in the position of administering a 15-state program. The #1 practice expressed by farmers that they want is silvopasture, and not all of our state directors will approve the practice. We need USDA researchers to be looking ahead to developing markets, supply chains, and value-added processing centers for agroforestry products, such as hazelnuts, elderberries, chestnuts, all of which are in high demand, but growers have few existing outlets to get them processed and sold. Particularly for the indigenous communities with whom we are working, this most traditional of climate smart practices, agroforestry, demands that we take these proactive approaches. So as we learned from the pandemic, building resilience in the local food system is paramount, and we should be investing accordingly. So tackling issues of scale for specialty crop farmers and frankly leveraging funds for enterprises like Harvey and Clarion Organics and Three Rivers Grown, where small, local, diversified farms have a fighting chance in the marketplace. Again, we're really pleased to be working together. We have some concerns that we hope will be addressed, but mostly are really, really grateful for the unprecedented investment in our communities, in our farmers, and in our food systems. So thank you.
I was really grateful to be at the end of this, but now I see it's also a curse since everyone wants to get out of here. I am Joanna Deming, the Executive Director of the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council. I go by Jo. It's great to be here. Thank you, Secretary Vilsack and your staff for putting this all together and for including us. So I'm kind of the hands and feet piece of the Food Policy Council, me and my staff, but a lot of you have been involved in the Food Policy Council or are currently involved. So if you helped found the Pittsburgh Food Policy Council, raise your hand if you were kind of at that table. Give them a round of a hand. And if you're a current board member, a former board member, raise your hand. Look around, give them a round of applause. And if you're going to be on the Pittsburgh Urban Farm Tour on Saturday, raise your hand. Mr. Bay. Come see Peace and Friendship Farm in the Hill.
Everybody's welcome. I'm feeding everyone.
They're giving out food afternoon, right? At 1 o'clock? Yes. So, it takes a lot of folks. If you have been engaged or in other ways in Pittsburgh Food Policy Council, raise your hand. Thank you guys so much for just paving the way. Give everyone a round of applause. Thank you for paving the way for so many things that have come before my time with the Policy Council, for the work that you do on the ground to help people access food, support our communities, grow food, inform the policy that needs to take place. Policy Council really depends on you all, so I'm glad you're here and in the room. I'm grateful that the Policy Council was able to get a grant from the USDA, the Regional Food System Partnership Grant. And I can't take credit for it since it was before my time. Give Dawn some props and the team that was on. But it is focused on a number of things and that have come up today. So local procurement being one of the big things. We were the privilege of working with Pittsburgh Public Schools to get the Good Food Purchasing Policy passed October of 2021. So that grant, this USDA grant, will allow us to continue working with them to do a baseline assessment to see where they're currently purchasing food, and then to see how the policy actually helps them procure from local farms. And not just local farms, but of course farms that also treat animals, land, and food well, right? So looking holistically at how our food system impacts all the stakeholders. Additionally, we're looking to kind of replicate that policy in a different way with some of the other area institutions, like the universities, hospitals, other county facilities potentially. And then working with a lot of partners in this room on this grant. It is a partnership grant. So PASA, of course, Kraft, the University of Pittsburgh. This is where I'm gonna miss someone, but I am grateful for our partners that are helping with that. And we'll be convening farmers as well, to talk about the barriers they face with providing food to those institutions. And that's what PASA and Kraft are really gonna help us with. So thank you guys for being a part of that grant. Another piece of it is expanding financial resources and also kind of
we're starting by just looking at the landscape of funding. So we have this great federal funding, we have this great state funding, but there's also a lot of foundations in our community. So we're trying to understand, what do they fund? Where are the gaps? Obviously, like processing facilities, urban farms, like there's folks that really could use additional support. So we're hoping to kind of lift up some of those things and make more connections with funders and people on the ground that are doing the work. So we'll make those connections partly as well with a grant writer that we're actually hiring right now. So if you know someone, send them our way that can work with folks and help them put together applications, which can be a bit complicated, especially when you're accessing public resources. And then the third thing is planning a food summit, which is going to be May 11th. Save the date. And we have a couple planning members on this panel. Ben and Lisa, who've been working very hard, and Chris over here, and Danelle, she's still here, and maybe others. Did I miss anyone who's on the planning committee for the summit? So we're going to have a great event in May. Another thing that we've been working on, and I would encourage the USDA and the state to continue to build off of, is Pittsburgh has the first food justice fund in the city of Pittsburgh, and we got to give Jake Pollack and the mayor credit for making that happen. So thank you so much. But also thank you to the Food Justice Fund Committee and the leaders that helped to push for that. And if you raise your hand if you've been involved with pushing for that, because I know we have a number of folks. Yes, so great work. So yeah, just using that food justice framework to really focus on these food apartheid communities, and that's the term that we use because we do see that these communities, there's a reason that they don't have food, and they happen to often be communities where Black and Brown residents live. So we really need to, use that framework as we continue to build out intervention so that we're doing it in an equitable way. The Food Justice Fund is just a start to that, and starting to look at the economic opportunities you're starting to build out, making sure those reach our communities, as well as the food access, and making sure we increase food access in those communities in particular. So some of the stuff we're working on, some of the challenges I'm hearing are around land access, financial resources to pay farmers to pay themselves in the urban space. A lot of people aren't necessarily growing food to sell. People want to grow food for their neighbors. So we need to make sure that there's money for not only those that sell, but also those that are giving food away. And I'm sure there's more, but I don't want to take up more time. But thank you so much.
Thank you to all our panelists. Really appreciate you being here and hearing all of your thoughts and comments. Let's give a round of applause to our panelists.
I do want to thank the panel. I think we have just a couple of minutes in the schedule left, and I'd like to maybe open it up to maybe one or two comments from the audience, if there are any. In the back there, way in the back.
I wrote this down in case my brain froze. My question is for you, Secretary Vilsack. My main reason for being a Harvey customer is knowing, because I visited, that the meat I feed my family has been humanely raised and processed. Should I read that again, or did that go away?
Okay, as many of us are aware, the race for cheap food has resulted in practices that result in the profound suffering of animals. Is there a place for improvements in the quality of life and death for farm animals in your vision for the future of American agriculture? Thank you, sir.
Well, I think there's no question that we need to be conscious of this because the market is demanding it, in addition to the fact that it's the right thing to do. And so it's up to the department, I think, to do two things. One, to enforce existing rules and regulations that are focused on animal safety and animal health, which we attempt to do as best we can. When circumstances arise where we determine that animals have not been treated humanely, there are repercussions and consequences. And then secondly, I think we need to continue to be educated in terms of learning how best to provide farmers with the knowledge and the information to know what is helpful, what is appropriate, what is an improvement to the way in which they are currently raising their animals. So I think we have two responsibilities, education and enforcement, which is part of our responsibility at USDA. It does get back to a certain extent to budget. The reality is that if our budgets are reduced, as some are proposing by as much as a third, that obviously compromises our ability to do all of what we're talking about here today, which is why I mentioned in my comments earlier the need for a budget that supports the staff that allows us to continue to do the work. So, education and enforcement for sure.
Thank you. My name is Jennifer England. I am with Food Rescue Hero and 412 Food Rescue. We were founded in the city of Pittsburgh to rescue food that would otherwise go to waste. We now have an app that we developed, which we licensed to 17 other cities around the country, and we've rescued 180 million pounds of food with that app. And I would encourage you not to think of the issue of food waste and the issue of farming as separate. I think that they're intertwined, and there's lots of ways that we can work to encourage both the rescue of food to get it to people who need it and are hungry, and to also help farmers. One program that we partnered with Harvey on last year, we didn't do it this year because we had a change in leadership, but we will next year, for example, was our Ugly CSA, where we purchased food. We purchased B-grade vegetables, surplus food from farmers that they wouldn't be able to sell. We created a CSA, which we then sold to our supporters at a lower cost, which then supported our mission to keep food out of the landfill and get it to people who needed it. And I think there's a lot of creative ways, if we think about these problems as farmer sustainability and food waste, if we think about them as intertwined, there's a lot of really creative ways that we can support both systems. So I would encourage you to think about including food waste reduction and prevention in the Farm Bill, and to look at how we can support both farmers and food recovery programs as they work together to address these twin issues.
It's going to be a broken record. Budget. We had allocated significant resources to invest in food loss and food waste initiatives. The debt ceiling discussion and negotiation resulted in a scooping of those resources, an elimination of those resources. We still have a smaller amount available that we provide in the form of grants, both in terms of food loss and waste innovation, as well as composting. There is an absolute correlation that you've mentioned. There's also a climate issue here.
Yep.
To the extent that you keep it out of the landfill, you are reducing the methane that is produced from food waste that goes into a landfill. So we are very much interested in this. We've partnered with the EPA, and we have probably several thousand companies that we are currently partnering with to try to meet the goal of reducing our food waste by a half. By 2030, we've got a ways to go, frankly. It's a combination of a lot of things. It's what you mentioned. It's also portion sizes. And the reality is, you go to some of these restaurants and, they serve a lot of French fries. It's a good example, right? I don't know what it is about, half the plate is French fries. And I try, when I order, I try to, limit the portion sizes because I'm conscious of this. But it's an uphill battle to get people's attention and focus. It's also, I think, incumbent upon us to provide the recipes, the ways in which folks can more effectively use leftovers so that they're not tossed and they're not placed in the landfill. So it's a combination of a lot of things, but I appreciate you bringing that up, and we are we are conscious of the connection. We have time for one more. You're very patient.
Thank you, Secretary Vilsack and Secretary Reddy, for both being here today. Colleen Young from the Greater Pittsburgh Community Food Bank. Grateful to be partnering with folks like Lisa, Nathan, and others here on the great work that we're doing. We're also proud to be rescuing almost 14 million pounds of food, which reduced carbon emissions by nearly 40 million pounds last year. So thank you for your attempted efforts and continued attempted efforts in that regard. I wanted to raise that we're really grateful for the local food purchase agreement funding between that and the Pennsylvania Agricultural Surplus System that allows us to have essential funding to purchase food directly from local farms. Without that, we really wouldn't be able to distribute all the fresh and local food that we do distribute. We're up to about 34% of the total food that we distribute being fresh and local food, so we're very proud of that. But we know that the need is continuing to go up, right? So we're looking for any additional opportunities for us to partner with local farms. We have a gleaning program where we can send volunteers to rescue food that's still out in the fields. We purchase directly, but we're still not meeting the demand. And so we were $5 million over budget for food costs last year, just because the amount of people that are coming to us is not equivalent with what we're receiving with TFAC commodities being down, and who knows what's happening with the shutdown and the farm bill. We really would just appreciate any additional investment that could help us either directly partner with local farms or have that pathway leave us out altogether, right? So ideally, when people are food secure, they don't need food banks at all. So thank you for your time today.
We did announce, I think it was several weeks ago, maybe last month, but within the last 30 days, additional resources that were allocated to the states for local purchasing for food banks and for schools. So we replenished some of the funds that the Secretary has had in the past. And of course, he's got to make decisions about how to allocate those resources, but I think we did provide you with a significant amount of money. So I think there's some additional help coming. But you're absolutely right. I don't think there's a recognition of or a full appreciation for how difficult it is for families until you've actually been in this spot or his spot and worked with food banks. You all do a tremendous job. We are forever grateful for the work that we do. It would be great if the SNAP program were sufficient to take care of the needs of folks. It's not. It's a supplemental program. It's constantly under pressure. And we're constantly fighting to maintain levels and investment. But we're going to use the CCC to the extent we can, and that goes back to the point I made earlier. To the extent that Congress wants to restrict my ability to use the CCC, it restricts my ability to fund resources to help food banks. So that's why I mentioned the need for us to continue to have that flexibility so we can respond to the need. Well, let me again thank everyone for spending a few minutes with us today. I hope you found this to be educational. I want to conclude by commenting on something that was said earlier today about the importance of incorporating what we're learning into the next Farm Bill. And frankly, that is the goal here from my perspective. This Farm Bill that's being discussed now it's more of a traditional debate about farm programs. I think we need this system to work for several years to build the momentum and the awareness of the need for continuation and incorporation into traditional Farm Bill programs and into the Farm Bill. And so that's my goal here, is I'm sort of working back from the Farm Bill of 2028 or whatever the year would be. How do we build enough awareness and capacity so that the next Farm Bill discussion is really about how do we provide more resources? How do we create a stronger system for small and mid-sized producers to be able to survive? How do we create a vibrant local and regional food system? Because the demand is out there, the need is out there, the interest and the passion is out there. And at the time we're doing that, we're also hopefully building a next generation of leaders. We have a next gen program where we're working specifically with historic black colleges and universities and minority serving institutions. But we're also expanding significantly our internships and fellowships and scholarships because the workforce at USDA is aging. We've hired 22,000 people to work at USDA this year. 22,000. But the problem is we've seen about 21,000 folks retire because folks at USDA look more like me than the folks in this audience, older folks. Nearly 50% of our workforce is at or near retirement age. Only 8% of our workforce is under the age of 35. So it's not a good dynamic, and it's not a good demographic. So we need to change that. So we're offering scholarships, we're offering fellowships, we're offering internships, we're encouraging and casting a wider net to encourage people to think of careers at USDA. We're looking at ways in which we can reform the federal hiring system so that it's modern, and it's pretty antiquated. And so there's a real effort here. But we need your help in lifting up what we've talked about here today, making it work, finding out how it doesn't work and trying to fix it, so that we can't be in a situation where when we start talking about the Farm Bill, the next Farm Bill, we're talking about this instead of reference prices or the kinds of things that are currently the conversation on Capitol Hill. So again, I want to thank my good friend Secretary Redding for being here today and for the great work that he does. Thank you all for continuing the fight, and appreciate the opportunity to be back. And you know, at some point in time, if I come back to Pittsburgh, I'd be more than happy to teach the class. All right, back in the old neighborhood. Okay. Thank you all very much.